Turbos! You love them, and we love them enough to keep telling you about not only how they work, but which cars were them best. But today, we're talking about the worst. I'm Trav, this is Ideal, and I am pleading with you to make sure to avoid these boosted lemons. Let's get into it. To kick this video off, let's talk about one of the most iconic cars ever built. But during a time when GM was just, well, what's the word for when you take one of the greatest pony cars ever and give it a slow, unreliable, choked down turbo? Because that's exactly what they did to the Trans Am in the 1980s. It was supposed to be a more fuel efficient version of their famous pony car. Which, first off, why? Why did GM look at one of their most famous performance lines and go, yep, we need one that gets better gas mileage? Secondly, it actually sucked. The turbo was unreliable, expensive to maintain, and at the end of the day, it was slower than the normal V8 Fire Chicken. Who would buy a Firebird and spend a whole lot of extra dough on the Trans Am package, all for something that's slower and completely misses the mark on what makes cars like that cool in the first place? You still get that V8 rumble though, but it made barely over 200 horsepower. That's old Chevy though. How about something from Chevy that's brand freaking new? It's not gonna be all old cars because Chevy has a car called the Trax, and it's about as meh as a car can get. And it's very, very cheap. This turbocharged little crossover can be had new for like under 25 grand, which is incredible, honestly. They even come with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so you have someone besides your fiance to yell at to find a new radio station every 30 miles. Unfortunately, that's where the positives end. The turbos, well, they like to fail, and even when they are working well, this car is just downright boring. And there are multiple cases of the vehicle catching fire, leaking gas into the cab, and failing to come to a stop. Ouch. Now, I know you make sacrifices when you buy a freakishly cheap car, but a turbo is supposed to make things exciting, and the Trax turbo just completely fails. Now, the Ecotec engine family is actually really good, but the little 1.4 liter version in this car is an absolute loser. I mean, the Trax isn't meant to be like a sports car though, unlike the Dodge Daytona of the 80s, which, well, wasn't a great car. I mean, it was front-wheel drive and looked like a Camaro from Wish.com. Plus, the Dodge Daytona, or Chrysler Laser if you wanted the fancy one, only made 142 horsepower. Now, it's not really fair to just bash on it for low power. After all, the Mustang GT only had like 165 horsepower, so the Daytona was technically competitive in its class. Journalists even praised it at the time for its decent handling and quick acceleration. But all that praise dropped down the drain as soon as you realized that the Mustang GT could easily last 100,000 miles, whereas you were lucky to keep a Daytona on the road for 50,000. The 2.2 liter Mopar under the hood is known as the Rod Knocker, and adding a turbo didn't make it better. Now the sad part is that the engine did eventually become pretty good when tuners got a hold of it. Dodge just never had the support. Luckily, Dodge never made that mistake again. No, they totally did. Enter the Dodge Caliber SRT4. Truth be told, I waffled for a bit whether this entry should be the Caliber SRT4 or the infamous PT Cruiser Turbo. But the PT Cruiser at least has a following, somehow. The Caliber though, like, who thought this was a good idea? When it came out, it was more expensive than other hot hatches, but its size made it slower. Plus, I mean, look at it. No, really, look at it. That being said, just like the Daytona, if you're a car hacker, the SRT4 is a decent platform. I mean, it's basically a really heavy neon. So they can be okay, but out of the gate, thumbs down. Now, keeping on the overweight cars train, did anyone ever believe that making a cute Italian car bigger would be a good move? Yeah, me neither. But apparently Fiat did, and they gave birth to the Fiat 500L, which is a bigger, heavier, and somehow less reliable version of the cute little Fiat 500. What's worse is that it's not even fast. At least the car it's ripping off, the Mini Cooper Clubman, is fun to whip around in. The truly terrible transmission in the 500L eliminates all those sweet turbo gains, and it helped make the 500 the most unreliable car on the market. I used to work right next to a Fiat dealership and could go on for hours reminiscing about all the horror stories surrounding this car, and that included many of them right off the trailer. You know, like when they were sold new. There's not much else to say. small entry for a small, terrible car. So let's transition to a big car from a big name, the Maserati Bi-Turbo. Shock, surprise, a Maserati on a list of terrible vehicles, but this one is special. See, the Bi-Turbo isn't like the Ghibli, where it was meant to be a top-of-the-line luxury car and just doesn't have the quality to back it up. The Bi-Turbo was meant to be a cheaper, easier-to-buy Maserati. And dear God, it was cheap. In the it was made of garbage kind of way. The engine was incredibly difficult to work on. The turbos love to just straight up fail, and since it's still a Maserati, parts are expensive as hell, and basically unobtainium. Wave goodbye to the Bi-Turbo, guys. Trust me, you don't want one. So that's a lot of Italy and America on this list, but our friends in Japan aren't free from sin. Remember the Eclipse, the plucky 4G63 tuner hero? It's a crappy little SUV now. And actually, you know the biggest shame? It's not total crap. It's actually perfectly fine. The 4B40 Turbo is a competent little engine, and as far as compact SUVs go, it looks okay. The problem is that it's totally uninspiring in literally every way. It rides rough, it can't corner, the inside is hot garbage, and most of all, it's an absolute insult to the Eclipse name. Literally, they could have just named it almost anything else. Why Eclipse? Why? Is it the worst turbocharged car ever made? I mean, no. But before we get to that, how about I take a page out of Brad's playbook and serve up an honorable mention? And this one, well, get ready for it, because this hybrid 3-cylinder turbo is probably my most controversial pick of the day. It's the BMW i8. Now, it's only a mention because it's not truly terrible. Don't tell Squid, but I like the looks. It's so futuristic. The thing is, the bike doesn't quite live up to the bark, or complete lack of bark, since the engine noises are fake. And you guys know just how much I hate fake engine noises. But yeah, it doesn't live up to the fake noises either. Despite being way more expensive than the BMW M3, it's slower, and all the tech in the world won't save you from a lack of fun. BMW i8, you look great and you drive beautifully, but get back to me when you can actually hang with the real supercars out on track. Okay, one last car, and I'm not gonna say it's the worst turbocharged car ever, just one of the worst executions of a turbo. I present to you the Corvette Turbo. I will be the first to tell you that the Corvette was not the death trap that the media made it out to be. They were very limited by tire technology, and plagued by issues as GM worked out the kinks in the engine, but they were not actually unsafe at any speed. The turbocharged version, which, can you believe the V8 heavyweight Chevy was turbocharging stuff in the 60s? The Turbo Corvair was pretty wildly unsafe when it came out though. First, the early Corvairs were prone to spinning out. Snap oversteer's a bitch even if you're a good driver. Second, it could roll and snap when the turbo kicked, and that's dangerous AF. Third, and really the nail in the coffin for the early Corvette turbos, was that it would overheat and blow up if you accidentally drove it like a sports car. The valves like to burn up, the belts like to fail at high RPMs, and the batteries would literally boil. I mean, when's the last time you even heard of that problem? Test drivers in Ohio were choking and vomiting while driving, and I kid you not, the culprit was that hot turbo combined with the inefficient electrical system was causing the batteries to straight up melt down. In 1965, the book Unsafe at Any Speed put the black mark on the Corvair, and Chevy never really got a chance to iron out all the issues with their premier sports car. Shame really, because I think they're actually really cool. All right, my friends, that's the list. Did you learn anything new? Which car secretly tempts you? And if you had to have one, which would it be? Let me know in the comments. Catch us on TikTok, go check the blog. This is Trav. I'll see you guys next time.